In a crowded courtroom where tension was already thick in the air, no one could have predicted the twist that was about to unfold. This is the story of a trial where a single piece of evidence, a DNA test, brought the entire room to silence and changed lives forever. Before we begin, welcome to our channel, where we bring you powerful stories from the courtroom, tales of truth, betrayal, and the shocking moments that leave everyone speechless. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss these gripping stories we share every day. The trial had already been dragging on for months. It involved a bitter legal battle between two families, with accusations flying back and forth about betrayal, hidden affairs, and a child caught in the middle of it all. The father, a man with wealth and influence, insisted that he had been deceived. He claimed that the child he raised for nearly a decade was not his biological son. The mother, on the other hand, stood firm, insisting the accusations were nothing more than an attempt to escape responsibility. Both sides had spent endless hours tearing into each other's characters, bringing witnesses and presenting arguments that painted vastly different pictures. To the public, it was more than just a family dispute. It was a scandal that revealed just how fragile trust can be, even in what was once thought to be a strong marriage. The audience in the courtroom wasn't just the jury, it was the neighbors, the extended family, and the curious locals who had followed the story from the very beginning. As the trial reached what many thought would be its predictable end, the defense attorney stood up with a calm but determined expression. He asked permission from the judge to submit one last piece of evidence. The request alone stirred whispers across the courtroom. When the judge agreed, the attorney lifted a small envelope and declared it contained the results of a DNA test. The mother's face went pale, while the father leaned forward, his jaw tightening. Everyone knew that what was inside that envelope had the power to end the case instantly. It wasn't just another argument or witness, it was science, undeniable and final. The judge took the papers, adjusted his glasses, and began reading, silently. The room was so quiet that every breath, every shuffle of a chair could be heard. People leaned forward, holding their breath, as though time itself had stopped. When the judge finally looked up, his eyes revealed what the words on the paper said. With a voice heavy with gravity, he announced that the DNA results confirmed the child was indeed not the biological son of the man who had raised him. A gasp filled the courtroom. Some clutched their mouths in shock. Others whispered in disbelief, while the mother broke into tears. What had been speculation and rumor was now fact. The truth was undeniable, and the entire direction of the trial shifted in an instant. But the real story wasn't just about the DNA. It was about betrayal, trust, and the shattering of lives that followed. And this was only the beginning, because while the truth had been revealed, what came next would show just how devastating honesty can be when it arrives too late. The courtroom remained frozen after the judge's announcement. The truth, printed in black and white on that sheet of paper, had struck like lightning. The father, who had sat stiffly for weeks of hearings, finally leaned back in his chair, his face a mixture of rage, grief, and vindication. The mother buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. The child, who sat quietly in the back with a relative, was too young to understand why the adults around him were breaking apart. The lawyers seized the moment immediately. The father's attorney stood, his voice sharp and commanding, declaring that his client had been deceived for years, that his love, his money, his reputation had been built on a lie. He demanded justice, not only for his client, but for the humiliation he had endured while raising a child that wasn't his own. The mother's attorney tried to object, insisting that biology wasn't the only measure of fatherhood, that love and care should matter more than DNA. But the damage was already done. The crowd inside the courtroom whispered and exchanged glances, many of them judging the mother harshly. The judge, struggling to maintain order, reminded everyone that this was a court of law, not a theater. But even he couldn't deny the shift that had just occurred. What had seemed like a complicated custody battle was now being reframed as fraud, betrayal, and deceit. The jurors sat stiffly, their expressions unreadable, but everyone could feel the weight pressing down on them. They knew their decision would change not just two lives, but an entire family's future. The father, his anger rising with every passing second, finally spoke out. He addressed the court directly, his voice cracking, as he recounted the years he had spent loving the boy as his own, only to learn now that it was all a lie. He talked about birthdays, school events, and late-night hospital visits when his son was sick. He didn't speak like a lawyer, he spoke like a wounded man, broken by betrayal. His words cut deep, not only to his estranged wife, but also to everyone listening. The mother, still in tears, tried to defend herself. She admitted mistakes, admitted the affair from years ago that had led to this child's conception. But she insisted she had done it to protect her family, to avoid tearing everything apart at the time. "I loved him," she cried, "and he loved you too. He still does. Nothing has changed about that." Her words echoed in the courtroom, but they only seemed to inflame the father further. The crowd shifted uneasily. For some, sympathy leaned toward the father, a man betrayed at the deepest level. For others, their hearts broke for the child, caught in a storm he never asked to be part of. And for a few, they pitied the mother who, despite her mistakes, was fighting desperately to hold on to what little she had left. The judge finally called for a recess, his gavel striking down hard. The lawyers gathered their papers, the spectators spilled into the hallways, and the family sat in stunned silence. The truth was out, but the question remained, what would happen next? Because while the DNA had revealed betrayal, the battle over love, responsibility, and justice was far from over. And when the trial resumed, the testimonies that followed would bring even. When court resumed after recess, the tension had thickened like a storm cloud hovering over every seat. The jurors filed back into their box, their faces tense, each one of them carrying the weight of what they had just learned. The father sat rigidly, staring straight ahead, his jaw clenched. The mother looked smaller than ever, her shoulders hunched, eyes red from crying. But it was clear. No one in that courtroom had come to witness an ordinary case anymore. This was a story of betrayal, identity, and truth, unraveling in real time. The first to take the stand after the recess was the father himself. He told the court how, from the very first day, he believed the boy was his. He spoke of sleepless nights, rocking the child, of saving money for his education, of teaching him how to ride a bike. His words weren't polished like an attorney's speech. They were raw, personal, and real. The jurors leaned forward, listening, some nodding slowly, others looking away, as if the pain was too much to take in. When the mother's lawyer cross-examined, he tried to paint a picture of love that transcended biology. He asked the father whether those memories he described were any less real because of the DNA result. The father's face hardened as he replied, "They're real, but they were built on a lie, and lies poison everything." The courtroom fell silent again. Then came the mother's turn. She stepped on to the witness stand, her voice trembling at first, but growing stronger as she spoke. She admitted the affair, She admitted the deception, but she begged the court to remember that her choices were made out of fear. Fear of losing her marriage, fear of raising a child alone, fear of destroying the life they had built together. She turned toward the father, tears streaming down her face, and whispered, "I was wrong, but he is still your son, in every way that matters." The father shook his head, refusing to meet her gaze. The jurors shifted uneasily. Some looked sympathetic, others disapproving. The courtroom had become a mirror of the town outside, where neighbors, friends, and even strangers debated endlessly about who was right and who was wrong. Then, unexpectedly, the boy's teacher was called to testify. She spoke about the child's innocence, his bright mind, his constant talk about how much he loved his father. "He doesn't know anything about DNA tests or court battles," she said softly. "All he knows is that he loves the man who raised him. And if that bond is broken, it will shatter him." Her words pierced through the walls of anger and bitterness, reminding everyone of the one person who couldn't defend himself, the child. The judge sat back in his chair, his hand pressed against his mouth, deep in thought. The lawyers shuffled their papers, ready to argue more points of law and justice. But for a moment, the courtroom was silent again, every heart heavy with the realization that this wasn't just about legal documents or scientific evidence. It was about love, betrayal, and the fragile bonds that hold families together. And as the next witness was called, everyone wondered, would their testimony ease the storm, or unleash a truth even more devastating than the DNA test had? The courtroom was quieter than ever as the final arguments began. The father's lawyer stood tall, his voice firm but steady. He reminded the court of the undeniable DNA evidence. "Science has revealed the truth," he said. "For 10 years, my client lived a lie, believing he was the biological father. That truth matters. Lies have consequences, and those consequences should not be dismissed as if they never happened." His words echoed in the chamber, every syllable cutting like a blade. Then the mother's attorney rose. He didn't deny the betrayal, nor did he excuse it. Instead, he turned the focus to the boy. "We cannot change what has been done," he said. "We cannot erase the pain or undo the past. But we must decide. Will this child lose the only father he has ever known because of an adult's mistakes? Or will we remember that family is not just written in blood, but in love, sacrifice, and memory?" His plea was emotional, almost desperate, and for the first time, even the judge's expression softened. When the judge delivered the ruling, the courtroom seemed to hold its breath. He acknowledged the cruelty of the deception, the broken trust, and the anger that had brought them all there. But then he spoke of the boy, the innocent, caught in the storm. "This child deserves stability, love, and the chance to grow without carrying the full weight of adult sins on his shoulders." He ordered custody arrangements that kept the father in the boy's life, even while recognizing the biological truth. It wasn't a clean resolution. It never could be, but it was one that sought to protect the child above all else. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Some felt justice had been served. Others thought betrayal had been excused. The father's face was unreadable, torn between the devastation of betrayal and the deep, undeniable love for the boy who still called him Dad. The mother wept, both relieved and ashamed. And the courtroom, which had erupted in shock days earlier with a single DNA result, now sat heavy with the complexity of human hearts. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, and the story spread like wildfire. But behind the headlines and the noise, the true lesson was clear. Truth has the power to destroy, but also the power to heal, if we allow love to guide the choices we make. And so this trial ended not with a simple answer, but with a reminder for all of us. Lies may unravel the strongest bonds, but love, real, selfless love, can sometimes hold them together, even in the face of painful truths. Thank you for staying with us through this powerful story. If you found it moving, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more daily videos filled with real stories, lessons, and unforgettable moments. And remember, in life and in love, honesty is the foundation that keeps everything standing strong.